What is up, guys? Stu here. So last week, the remake slash new adaptation of Stephen King's horror classic It was released in cinemas. I went and saw it with my eyeballs, so let's talk about that shit with my mouth. So if you haven't read the original novel or seen the original two-part TV movie of Stephen King's It, you probably don't really know much about it, so I'm gonna fill you in. It's essentially about this group of kids in this town called Derry who are dealing with this entity which is just tormenting them and stealing kids, and it's just generally not a fun thing at all to have in your town. You don't really want it there. And this latest adaptation is brought to us by Andy Muschietti, who is a director behind previous horror films like Mama, which was actually, it's an alright film. Don't mind that one. But it being based on a Stephen King novel, there's inevitably a lot of excitement there because Stephen King's very good at what he does. And I actually wasn't the biggest fan of the original It film that went straight to TV with Tim Curry. I wasn't around to watch it when it came out, so it's one of those films which I'm a bit annoyed I didn't get to see when it was originally released, because I imagine there are lots of people who saw it as a kid who were like, well, fuck that, that's traumatized me now. But by the time I got around to seeing it, it was far too dated. It didn't really do for me what I think it intended to do when it was released. So it's one of those films which they announced a remake and I was like, you know what, fuck yeah, I'd love to see what could be done with this story in an updated fashion and make it actually quite interesting, scary and exciting. And so that being said, it makes me all the more happy to stand here and say, yeah, they fucking smashed it. I had a really, really great time with the remake of It. It was wonderful. So It being a film about a bunch of kids in a town, you gotta have some kids in it. It's got a good child cast is what I'm trying to get at here. We got Finn Wolfhard from Stranger Things as a standout. He was great in Stranger Things. He's great here. I was a bit worried that we'd just get his character from Stranger Things in a different film and it'd be like, oh, that's his thing now. That's sad. But no, it was fun watching him in a different personality to his in Stranger Things, which is a weird thing. That's how acting works. People do different personalities. But he's good, alright? That's what I'm trying to say here. But the other standout in the cast of young actors here for me is Yaden Lieberher. Pretty sure that's probably, but almost definitely not how you say his name, but I'm rolling with it anyway. But I guess he's arguably the central character in the film, and I thought he did a fantastic job. And he brought a surprising amount of emotion to the role, and I love that side of things. And in fact, that's something that carries across through all of the child actors' performances in this one. They all carry a surprising amount of emotion to them. At first, it's like, oh, okay, cute kids, they're friends, this is fun to watch. And then halfway through, it's like, oh, shit, you're hitting me there now. My heart. Please help me. I mean, there are a couple of moments with lines that are delivered and I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, that could have been done better there. But they're few and far between, and when they do happen, I'm so on board with the characters anyway that I don't really give a shit about that side of things. I think they all nail what they need to nail from the characters of this one. They were all fantastic. But the real standout here is obviously Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise the Dancing Clown, who delivers a really fucking wonderful performance here. He's just so much fun to watch. Every time he was on screen, although he wasn't really in the film as much as you'd expect from all of the marketing around it, he was still a joy to watch. He had so many new things to the character which are just really fun to watch, like drooling a lot. I don't know how he made that much drool in his mouth, but he did it, and it's fucking creepy. But I was really happy to see that he went and took the character and made it his own and did something new with it, as opposed to just giving us a Tim Curry 2.0. So he smashed it, and I love watching him on screen. So yeah, you've got great performances from child actors, along with a great central performance from a weird, creepy, crazy villain. What more could you really want from an It remake, okay? They're already doing well there. But then you layer onto that the direction from Andy Muschietti, and it just keeps on getting better. Just keeps on going for it. And I think the thing that Muschietti nails most about the direction of this film is the tone. It is a very difficult tone to achieve, but they managed to achieve it, and it works incredibly well because of that. Because there's so many different elements to this film, as is the case with pretty much any Stephen King novel. You can't really separate it into any given genre. It's not really a straight through and through horror film. It's got elements of romance, coming of age, and I think trying to juggle so many different tonal elements is no easy task for many directors, and I'm happy to say that Andy Muschietti did a really good job with that. I actually love that he chose to show just the child side of the storyline in this, because in a novel, it's kind of split between them as adults looking back on what happened to them as kids, and in the TV movie, it was split between those two as well. And I like that they went for solely the child storyline in this one, and they're obviously going to show the adult storyline in, spoilers, the next one. But yeah, by choosing to focus solely on the childhood part of the storyline, it allows him to really focus on those elements in the film which work really well to create a genuinely likable cast of characters and story. I mean, yeah, the film, if you kind of write it on paper, it's pretty much about a bunch of kids getting hunted by a terrifying demon clown, but the main focus here is actually on them as characters and their friendship and their bond and what that means for everything else that's happening in the storyline. And I love that shit. Because you know I love me some coming of age shit, and my goodness gracious, the coming of age shit in this film was very welcome here. But on the subject of the scary clown side of things, which is what I imagine most people will probably go and see this film for, it definitely does deliver there. It was really, really satisfying from that side of things. I'm not going to stand here and say it is the most terrifying thing I've seen in the cinema ever, 'cause it just isn't that for me, really. And if I'm honest, I've seen some scarier films in the cinema this year, but nothing that's quite hooked me as this one has. Despite not being absolutely, like, rip my skin off, get me the fuck out of here, terrified, I was in it, I was on the edge of my seat constantly, and I ended up really appreciating the kind of creativity behind some of the scares in the film, particularly this one sequence in a haunted house where the kids go in and the horror sequences are all moulded around their certain fears. So genius, and I just had so much fun watching it. It's the sort of horror that isn't just kind of slapping you to the floor, pissing on you and walking off and leaving you. It's taking you through on a ride. It's a fun time. So at the end of the day, you finish it and you feel like you've all gone through something together, and it was just so much fun. But whilst it was a fun time throughout and I was constantly entertained, there are certain elements which are really quite dark for this kind of film, and I'm very happy that they went down those routes, because it would have been so easy to have cut out some of the darker elements in the film, I don't know, for like studio reasons, like they don't want to show it, but I'm very happy they just let Andy Muschietti do what he needed to do with the story here. I mean, he obviously, again, cut out the big sewer orgy scene from the book, because that is just a bit too weird. But there are still some darker elements in here with regards to kids doing fucked up shit, and fucked up shit happening to kids on screen. And I'm not saying this as some guy who's like, yeah, I totally get off on seeing kids getting brutally murdered on screen. Give me some more of that. Oh, fuck, that good stuff. That would be weird. But it's nice to see a film that doesn't shy away from being brutal towards kids. So yeah, there are multiple scenes in the film where I'm like, oh, shit. You really did it. You really fucking did it. And then there are also the moments where I did actually genuinely get quite emotional. Not because kids were getting murdered, but because the touching sides of the story to do with friendship, to do with these characters bonding, were genuinely very touching. I think that's one side of the film which was surprisingly handled very well above else, and that is the emotion behind it. It is a film with a surprising amount of heart, and it all really, really works. So you get to the final climax, you get to the end scene, and I was welling up. I was fucking welling up, and I know I cry at everything. Okay, just hear me out, alright? It is touching. I mean, there are some things in there which held the film back from me. Most notable of those being, as I said, some of the lines of dialogue delivered by some of the children took me out of the scene a little bit. And I'm usually a strong advocate for a bit of cheese in films. Nothing wrong with it. If it's done well, it's done well, and I like it in there. But there are a couple of moments, particularly towards the end, where I was like, oh, that is very cheesy. And it also falls into some of the traps which are just kind of inevitable with the genre, particularly the horror part of the genre, where kids or characters are seeing shit and doing shit and just not really telling other people until a little bit later in the film and when it's necessary for the storyline. Most of the time, it's understandable because they're kids, and it does do a very good job of explaining why some of these kids might not actually be running around fucking heads off going, oh shit, there's a ghost, like anyone with a rational brain would. But I know there's certain points where I couldn't help but think, okay, I kind of think if I was in that position, I was a little kid, I would have said something to someone. I don't know, like you go into a library basement, oh, big giant fucking creepy clown with giant razor sharp teeth chases me, and then you walk out and you're like, oh, I'm a little bit scared, but I'm going to carry on with my day. No, you're not selling me on that shit. I would be straight out to my friends like, guys, we're getting the fuck out of here. Please, next train. But no, I do think it's kind of unfair to really bash the film for some of those problems there. They're there, and they're small and minor, and it doesn't actually really affect my enjoyment of the film overall, because I had a fantastic time with it. It was just fun, scary, creepy, terrifying. It had heart. It had basically everything I wanted from it. And I have not been able to stop thinking about it since I saw it a week ago. I cannot wait to see it a second time, and I am sure my rating will probably go up. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and give it a very high 4 stars. But what about you guys? Have you seen it? What do you think about it? And how does it compare to A, the novel, if you've read that, or B, the TV movie, if you've seen that? How does it rank up? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to know what your thoughts are on the film and how it's doing. Let me know down below. We'll have a big old discussion there. And as usual, if you like this review and you want to see me talk about more shit, please go ahead and click subscribe. But until next time, stay beautiful, mother truckers.